Hi, welcome everyone to another episode of Let's Talk Special Economic Zones. I'm your host, Ainsley Brown. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about zones and achieving net zero. Now, the environment and sustainability are important to everyone, and zones play their part, have to play their part. Unfortunately, zones sometimes have a negative, or historically have had a negative um, record because of things in the past where zones were seen as areas where there's lax regulation or less than ideal regulation over certain things, particularly when it comes to the environment and labor. Basically, multinationals exporting their problems, things that they can't do or get away with in their home country, they send it over, particularly into third world countries. However, zones are much more complex than that these days. Um, Zones are found all over the world, including in developed countries, and even in the developing world, you'll find that there's an increasing drive for sustainability across the board, not just environmental consciousness or environmental standards being held high, but just overall sustainability, inclusive of labor matters, gender equality, for example, and things like that, and fair wages and things like that. So right across the board, but we're going to speak about how um, zones can achieve or contribute to us achieving net zero. And that is net zero in terms of carbon emissions. And in another episode, I'll speak about, in fact, we shouldn't really be aiming for net zero. We should be aiming for negative, but that's for another day. Uh, this discussion is timely because right now the UN climate summit is on in Egypt, COP27, where they're discussing some very salient matters and trying to get countries to, you know, uh, do different things in terms of their commitments to achieving net zero, cutting carbon emissions, providing financing for, uh, you know, third world countries and so forth, so they can achieve the goals or contribute to the goals, as even though um, they are uh, less guilty, so to speak, of the high levels of carbon emissions that we have these days. But I want to turn to a McKinsey study which speaks to the that the average spend would be about 9.2 trillion annually, up to achieve net zero by 2050. That's 9.2 trillion. That's a lot of money. There's one way of looking at it as a cost, and another way of looking at it is an opportunity, and both perspectives are correct. It is a cost, but it is also an opportunity. And zones being what they are, whatever you call them, free trade zones, special economic zones, um, free zones, enterprise areas, industrial park, whatever you want to call them, play a critical role. That zones are involved in well over 50% of global goods trade. If you add um, services, I'm sure it's gone up to probably 70 or more percent um, in terms of being involved in trade. So zones can play and are playing an oversized role in the problem, but also they're part of the solution. The same study, McKinsey study, and I would urge everyone to check it out. I'll put it in the link. I'll put the link, sorry, down below in the comment or in the thing, the caption section. Um, they focused on nine key sectors: power, that's power generation; oil and gas; automotive; aviation and shipping; steel; cement; mining; agriculture and food; forestry and land use. These are the nine key sectors that they focus on for that $9.2 trillion in annual spend. And zones from the construction, I guess you have to even go back to the design, um, can make a positive contribution to net zero. But also the industries or sectors that they have inside of them and what they do and what they mandate for them to do, or the environment that they create for them to make a positive contribution to achieving net zero, from solar panels being up on roofs to even just allowing light to come into factories and office spaces and so forth, which again has other knock-on effects for mental health, for example, having natural light, coming in through the buildings, and there are systems that now allow for natural light even on places that have multiple floors or buildings that have multiple floors. Um, but also, you know, shipping is a big area. Aviation as well. How we live in a globalized world, but how the goods are transported. So logistics, the transportation logistics of things, and cutting carbon emissions there. We're seeing where increasingly people are looking at electrification, similar to what's happening in the automotive sector with EVs. There's look at that side of things in terms of going electric with planes. And then with shipping, they're looking at various different options from LNG powered, methanol, green hydrogen. There's a whole host of things happening now. And zones, of course, some of them are ports, some of them are airports or have airports in them. They have to design that infrastructure and build out that infrastructure to accommodate these things, as well as participating in it in terms of attracting the folks that actually build and produce these things. So zones definitely are, well, one part of the problem, but then therein lies the opportunity. So because zones are part of the problem, they're equally part of the solution. So if you like this episode, please like, share, subscribe. If you want to see me do a particular subject matter, just leave me a comment down below and I'll get right back to you.